Alchemist and living legend of the people. Let's hear it for Edward Elric.
Fullmetal Alchemist.
I love that show.
Yeah,
It's
same.
I love Fullmetal Alchemist. It's amazing.
Who's your favorite character?
It's Ed. You know, everyone loves Ed.
Shit, he's right. And then I watched it and I was like, and then it became my favorite of all time.
I mean, like, I think, like, for the anime community, Fullmetal Alchemist is kind of like the godfather of, like, anime.
As you can tell by the title of the video, I'm of the opinion that Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is not a very good show. For years now, I've been getting told this is one of the GOATs. Then I watched the show, and I really wanted to like it, but I just don't. I don't understand why or how this show is brought up in the same conversation with Berserk, Cowboy Bebop, or Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball to a less extent simply because when people talk about it, they mention how it started an entire genre rather than it being as good as it was during Z. I'm not going to run through the plot of each episode or recap the show during this video. While I recognize it's been a while since the show has been on, for the sake of time I will go with the understanding that you have seen the show. If you haven't, you will not be missing anything because this show is not very good and has no deep themes that are punctuated by incredible storytelling or consistent character writing. I'll be going over the things that I didn't like or aggravated me the most, while also being things that I feel are representative of the show at large and the problems that it has. Earlier I mentioned 3 shows that have different levels of humor and tone, with Dragon Ball being the one that is the most similar to this show. So you may believe that comparing the show's humor and tone to that of Berserk or Cowboy Bebop is disingenuous. However, per the show's own fan base, it is on that level in terms of writing quality. So I'm attacking the humor of this show based on these comparisons and its own quality as well. I will not be directly comparing the jokes as that doesn't serve any function, merely the quality of the jokes and how it affects the overall narrative. The humor in this show is lazy and bad. I'm aware that humor is subjective and that this show isn't a comedy, but I think the show made me laugh a total of 3 times in 60 episodes while attempting to make a lot of jokes in those 60 episodes. The number of times that I heard our protagonist being called short and his reaction being literally the exact same in an attempt to make the audience laugh was torture.
These are the Elric Brothers.
Big brother, little brother.
This is my younger brother, Alphonse Elric. Get that? Younger brother.
The younger means little. You're little.
So it's not you?
No. I'm his younger brother, Alphonse.
But he's a runt.
Oh, yeah, can a runt do this? Oh, see? Looks like my timing was perfect. You two are the Elric Brothers, right? Wow, it's an honor to finally meet the youngest state alchemist ever. You're a real legend around here. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mays Hughes, a pleasure.
You want Edward. I'm actually his younger brother, Alphonse.
You're the Fullmetal Alchemist? Sorry, I had no idea you'd be so...
Go on, say little. I dare you.
It wasn't funny the first time they did it, where they just kept doing it, and at times where it wasn't thematically appropriate. This show will have these unfunny jokes happen in the middle of serious scenes.
And do you recall what it was I promised you then?
You said if I had faith, you'd bring him back to life. No, wait! It's not me, honest!
Damn it, I'm the Fullmetal Alchemist! It's not him! It's me!
It's the short one. You're kidding.
As well as the protagonist just walking around to get to the next plot point, and it pulls me out of the story. The jokes themselves aren't the problem, it's simply the frequency of the jokes and their placement that I have an issue with. They tone back these jokes whenever Mustang is on screen, mainly because all the jokes are tied directly with the protagonist, but when Mustang is on screen, they are not a problem because they happen less. The jokes are still bad, but when they're infrequent, it makes me enjoy the show. But when the main character of the show is on screen, they repeat the same joke ad nauseum, even when it's not thematically appropriate. There is no separation between the plot being taken seriously and when there's supposed to be a funny scene. The jokes will happen at any time regardless of if it's appropriate.
I'm trying to explain that our bodies might be connected somehow, even though I'm here and your body is over there. See, that might actually explain why I'm so short.
He admitted it. He's starting to face reality.
It isn't like the show pointing out our protagonist's height somehow affects the narrative in some way, which is what I thought whenever they brought it up for the 5th time. It is simply that they believed it would get people or the young kids watching to laugh. Now, I'm not opposed to a shallow humor in a kid show. However, whenever you're telling a fairly dark story, and that's literally all the humor, either unfunny high humor or the adopted sister character hitting our protagonist with a wrench, I stop taking your story seriously and start wanting to watch something else. If I wasn't comparing this show to Berserk or Cowboy Bebop, or have the expectation that this is better than those two, which is what the best anime of all time means, then I would be lenient on the anime humor. Even then, kind of not, because Demon Slayer has one character that embodies this humor, and he doesn't do it all the time, or I don't see it all the time, because he's not the main character. Compare this show to Z or Berserk or Cowboy Bebop. These shows know when to dial back the humor because it'll clash with the tone. The first parts of Z are all fun and games, with Goku having silly interactions with his son and a lion, but when Raditz shows up, there isn't a single joke being told. Goku and the other characters are all business. Now, you may say that this is a kid's show, so it's not meant to be taken seriously. This is a defense that I've seen when people attack the Clone Wars TV show for having bad writing, so I'm preparing for it ahead of time. Disregarding that kids shows can have good writing, and that Dragon Ball is technically a kid's show, yet people still take many of their stories seriously, I would say that any show that has the main villain partake in having a whole country of people killed and a genocide of a whole race of people, and his main goal being that he's trying to kill all inhabitants of another country again, would mean that that's a serious story, and ignoring that this story has themes of racism and being anti-war along with ideas of systemic change, I'd still say that this isn't a good defense for bad writing. The placement of humor in this show is at direct odds with the narrative, and it clashes with the tone of many scenes. So over the course of the series, I couldn't actually get into the story because our main protagonists are what causes this unfunny humor to happen all of the time.
That could be the reason why his growth is stunted.
And whenever I hear people say that this show is one of the greatest or the greatest of all time, I expect good writing, not unfunny mistimed humor and story conclusions that feel like they're written for children.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Our main protagonist is the most unbearable, hypocritical person to follow in the whole show. This is mainly because of the humor, as I mentioned before. It pulls me out of every interaction he has with the other characters in serious scenes, or just regular scenes with him in it. He is constantly being referred to as short, and having this annoying reaction every time makes me less invested with his story to get his and his brother's body back, because I now associate the character with being annoying when the same unfunny joke has happened for the 20th time in a row. As I mentioned before, the jokes are repeated ad nauseum in serious and unserious scenes, which means that they aren't well-paced or spread out at all. So when I say that this got on my nerves, it isn't because I didn't like the joke, it's because I heard the joke 300 times over the whole show. The main goal of our heroes is getting their bodies back. Despite being brought up constantly, it's really sidelined at every turn for the more interesting plot with Mustang. This isn't a criticism on its own, because they should, prioritize that story over their desire to get their bodies back if they were characterized as people that weren't selfish in their one desire to get their bodies back, which I will get into later. However, I mainly bring this up because the main goal to get their bodies back is contradicted by some of the monologues by Edward.
Alchemy is the science of understanding the flow of matter and its laws. The process of comprehension, deconstruction, and reconstruction. The world flows too. It must also follow laws. Everything circulates. Even death is a part of that circulation. You must accept the flow.
Which suggests that he has learned that accepting death and the consequences of your actions is how you should proceed in life. And that him trying to resurrect the ones that he loves goes against this natural cycle and is actively trying to play God. However, his actions during most of the series is at direct odds when he's trying to get his and his brother's body back anyway. I understand that that's still his brother, and he wants him to have the ability to interact with the world in the ways that, that he used to. But it doesn't change that his actions go against many of the themes he claims to have learned.
There's an old myth about a hero who flew on wings made of wax. He thought he could touch the sun, but when he got too close, his wings melted and he came crashing back down to Earth. Right, Al?
Brother.
So you may be thinking that this will somehow be gone over in the show, that at some point he will have to actually learn this theme. The contradictions will be laid out before him and he'll actually have to make a choice. For clarification, him getting his brother's body back is essentially resurrection. So with that in mind, he does, indeed need to make a choice between his main goal and the lesson he claims to have learned on several occasions. Yes, he does indeed make a choice between getting his brother's body back or accepting the natural way of things. Instead of choosing to be with nature as he's preached on several occasions, he gets a happy middle ground, which is not how the reconciliation of these two ideas works at all. Now, no, I didn't for 1 second actually believe that he would let Alphonse die, but there are so many monologues of Edward saying that he has to accept the consequences of their actions and move on. And as I keep repeating, the continuation of this goal is not accepting the consequences of your actions, nor is it moving on. To fully explain my problem with this arc, I'll give an example. So Alphonse sacrifices his soul to bring Edward's arm back. And he does this, but because he knows that he'll be resurrected anyway. So Alphonse also doesn't learn the lesson either. But it makes sense because Alphonse has been characterized as compassionate to everyone despite all logic, which could have actually been a good foil for Edward, since Alphonse seems to be the only person who accepts the themes Edward preaches. Like, he could be like, I need to die. I should have died a long time ago, but I haven't. Let me make that right now. While Edward is like, no, I'm going to get both of our bodies back. No one's dying. No one should die. If I have the means to stop people from dying, then I should do that. Alphonse should have the philosophy of no needless deaths, you know, like we see in the show. And this would explain why he tries to save everyone, even those that have tried to kill him, while Edward doesn't care about them and is single-minded in his goal. But, insert better story here. Edward brings Alphonse back to life after his sacrifice, so it's like nothing happened. Except now he can't use alchemy because that was the exchange that he offered to bring him back. So he completed his goal that flied in the face of all the lessons that he's learned. Because once he gets his brother's body back, he will never have to use alchemy again. The only reason why he uses alchemy now is to be so proficient at it that he can get their bodies back. Like, sure, there's plenty of hints throughout the show that alchemy is used in helpful ways, but this world isn't fully dependent on alchemists. So the point still stands. A lot of people don't even know that alchemy is a thing. I believe that they have one talk, like the Elric Brothers have one talk about what they'll do after they get their bodies back, and it isn't about freaking what kind of jobs they'll do. So that for all intents and purposes, this world is still technically normal. Like, giving up alchemy does not mean that he somehow truly learned this lesson of acceptance. I mean, if that's true, this means that getting what he's wanted for the whole series while giving up something that he's used as a means to an end is equivalent to him coming to an understanding of what it means to walk with nature and understand and actually accept the natural cycle of things, which flies in the face of what it means to actually accept the natural cycle of things. Choosing between selflessness by accepting that your decisions have consequences and selfishness by satisfying a goal that rectifies your poor decisions is not reconciled by getting your selfish need fulfilled and then choosing to be selfless and accepting of the reality after the fact.
I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see.
Like, let's use the Icarus example and twist it a bit. Like, let's say Icarus had a son and he fell and died flying too close to the sun instead of him. Icarus imitated the gods and learned the cost of that through that death and never does it again because the punishment was so severe. But this show is teaching us that Icarus could go on a journey using those same wings that got his son killed to then figure out how to bring his son back with the wings. But the cost of that is he has to exchange the wings and never use them ever again. Like, which he would obviously gladly do because he would never do that. That's a no-brainer decision. But also, during that entire journey, he was stating that he should have never built those wings and has to accept that his son is dead. All while using the wings and trying to get his son back. And this somehow means that he has learned the lesson of acceptance and to not imitate the gods again. Like, no, Edward uses the magic of this world, which has been characterized to turn people into arrogant people, to bring his brother back, but he loses that same power, and it fulfills its job that he's been using it to do, bringing his brother back because he knows it made him arrogant. He still won in the end, though. It fulfilled its purpose, and then he lost the power that he probably wasn't going to use again, unless he really had to. Like, losing alchemy when he no longer needs it is not a satisfying conclusion to an arc, nor does it actually conclude the themes of the story in a meaningful way. And it doesn't even make sense. Like, I couldn't even get through that Icarus example as clean as I wanted to, because it doesn't make sense. Stepping away from the main dilemma of this character for a bit, he's characterized as a selfish person without consequence, other than the first thing that happened where he tried to bring back his mom and he freaking destroyed his brother's life, you know, despite the monologues proving that he should be anything but that kind of character. He is a very selfish one. He's opposed plans because the people that are involved in them have wronged him personally or are people he disliked for personal reasons, when he should recognize that the conspiracy he's involved in and is actively trying to stop is way bigger than personal issues, which makes sense in some circumstances when the main plot hasn't been discovered. But at a certain point, the safety of the country or the people that can procure that safety is more important than your beef with your father who left you when you were younger, or the fact that the only man that knows how to read the important documents also happens to be the person who killed Winry's parents.
Right. I think it might be best if we took you back to Fort Briggs to hide you from senior military staff.
Hold on. What are you saying? You mean we're bringing that monster with us?
We need to decipher those notes, right, Elric?
There's not a damn thing I want that guy's help with.
He does stupid things like this all the time, despite the villain's plan being more important than his meaningless squabble.
Meaningless, huh? What do you know of meaningless?
You could argue that Edward is also a character as a selfish, headstrong, and inexperienced who needs to grow. Two of the three things are true. Like, headstrong, sure, but there's a difference between headstrong and whatever freaking Edward is when it comes to listening to people's plans. Headstrong is typically used to describe a character who thinks in terms of the ends rather than the means. They may take risks to ensure that the main goal is achievable in the immediate, rather than risking the formulation of a plan because they may not have time for that. The number of times he's opposed a plan or a decision without even thinking about why or how it affects the team was frustrating. But it isn't because he's headstrong, it's because he's selfish and only cares about how he personally feels rather than the goal.
What the hell are you doing? Al's trapped in there with that monster. How could you do something like that?
I mean, you would think that he'd be a more contemplative character, considering the whole journey he plans to go on was due to a reckless decision where the consequences weren't thought out and how he preaches acceptance. But I don't think the writers realize that he's selfish despite him learning the lesson of acceptance, as I mentioned earlier. To defend the contradictions of this character, some people may use the monologues he's had in this show, particularly the ending one where he talks to God, that I meant, like that whole scenario that I kind of mentioned earlier. But that doesn't matter because of the things I keep mentioning. The character is still pursuing his goal and gets what he wants in the end. Like, to be fair, Alphonse does seem to be a more contemplative character and understands the themes more than Edward, since he does mention a couple times that he accepts, you know, if he can't get his body back, which informs like why he's willing to sacrifice himself to save Edward. But he's not the main character, and it doesn't even really matter if he understands the themes or not because Edward doesn't. Now, all this is bad, you know, the contradictions with the main theme itself is bad, but that's not even the biggest thing that really, like, annoyed me about the show. The next part is really why I'm making this video.
You're observant. I can't believe I forgot. There, how do I look now?
Oh, a friend of mine, he always says, revenge is a fool's game.
So I didn't like our main character, so you must be asking what made me keep watching the show and why is this video being made? What was keeping me watching was Roy Mustang's character. The main plot is simple to follow, and I do like how Mustang unravels everything and works to overthrow the system, and how he's always wanted to do that. But even this is ruined with how they ended Mustang's arc. Mustang and his team are probably the best characters in the show, mainly because they treat the situation they're in seriously as they uncover this conspiracy, you know, unlike someone else we know. The one thing that I kind of don't like is that the more the main character interacts with Mustang and his team, the goofier the team gets, the goofier the scenes are. But I will say that every time he was on screen, I was thoroughly invested in his story. So much so that I wished the show was just about him and the main plot, since it's the only thing that's consistently written, other than the ending of his arc. Anytime that he made like a weird face or got upset about something, like typical like anime humor, it pulled me out of the story a little bit, but I saw it a billion times before, so it wasn't as much as our main protagonist, so I was okay with letting it go. Almost everything with Mustang and his team uncovering the conspiracy I enjoyed, so I don't really have any comments on it, other than the ending. What I did not like was him not getting his revenge for the death of Hughes. Naturally, this show has been out for a while. I had already seen the part of Mustang blazing envy, and I was mainly watching to get to that part in particular because I enjoyed watching like Mustang up until that point. And I was like, oh shoot, I felt the emotion from that clip, and then I was like, oh yeah, I want to watch that. So the part I'm about to go over wasn't spoiled for me, so my expectations for this were completely subverted, and not in a good way. On Instagram, I repeatedly saw people saying, oh, Mustang getting his revenge felt so good. But he doesn't get his revenge. He doesn't get to kill Envy, and we get revenge is bad, and this will change you for the worst as the reason why. Like, even if I agreed that revenge is bad in this context, I'd say that this is stupid because the situation around this particular revenge story is far different than, you know, A Last of Us 2. You know, I'm sorry, but this man for the entirety of the show has remained calm, cold, and calculated unless he has the chance to avenge Hughes, and even then he's all business. The moment he asks a person if they killed Hughes and they say no, he kills them anyway and goes back to normal cold Mustang before that and after that, you know, to systematically take down the main villains.
I get it.
Please don't. Oh, don't.
And jealousy is an ugly thing.
No, I don't want to die. No.
I'm not giving you a choice. Now burn in hell!
Why? Why?
Daddy said he has a bunch of work he needs to do. No, stop it. Stop putting dirt on him. Daddy!
Just for 1 second, imagine hearing your best friend's daughter saying this at the funeral, and then having freaking your other friend, your other childhood friend, stop you from avenging his death. Imagine that. So you're telling me that if he avenges his best friend while simultaneously taking down one of the secret regime's lapdogs, he will be some psychopath who is bad at leading the country because he will be consumed by anger and rage. They compare him to the Ishvalan guy who literally murdered people because of the crimes they were ordered to commit and used a contradictory belief system as justification. And it was also a lie to satisfy his revenge, to demonstrate to us that revenge is bad, as if that makes a point to why Mustang shouldn't get revenge for Hughes. So the person who killed Hughes is responsible for the whole war that turned Mustang, his friends, and every other alchemist into killers, but they say that he'll be evil if he avenges Hughes by killing someone who got innocent people killed and is trying to do it again. I'm sorry, but no. And to make this worse, the person who interferes with him getting his revenge is our main protagonist and his childhood best friend, who also was friends with Hughes and who was literally turned into a killer, and in scenes prior to the betrayal literally said that she felt guilty for the children of Ishval and the fact that Mustang used her secrets to kill them. And the only reason why he was doing that was because of the person right in front of her. So the person who started the whole war and the person who turned both of them into monsters is right in front of you, and you stop Mustang from killing them to stop him from becoming a monster and being consumed by rage. Which makes literally no sense because of the way he was characterized as a calm, cold, and calculated person up until this point. It doesn't make any sense, dude. It doesn't make any sense. The craziest thing about this whole interaction is that they say that they want to kill Envy anyway. So who cares if it's them or Mustang? Also, them stopping him is pointless because he's the only person who's capable and has been shown of being capable of killing the homunculus. And I think they noticed this because the only way that they even work around this stupid writing decision of him not getting his revenge is to have Envy kill themselves. What is that? They destroyed the one thing that was keeping me invested in the plot, and it was due to something so stupid that I literally couldn't even predict was a possibility. To make matters even worse, we then get a scene of our protagonist calling Envy jealous of how of the human characters in the show can let go of their emotions and work together, which isn't even true because for the whole show, we've heard our selfish protagonist protest at every turn if a character comes up with a plan that involves people he doesn't like, or if it means letting Al, who is in no danger of being harmed by the villains, be in proximity with the villains. Then it gets even worse because while they're arguing about letting Mustang get his revenge, they risk letting Envy escape and cause more damage to the heroes. We've been shown that Envy is capable of taking over someone's body and absorbing other people to get back to full strength. At multiple points in the show, he has done this and has tried to do it to our protagonist as well. So while everyone who can put a stop to the main goals of our protagonist and standing around and arguing about how revenge is bad, and Edward is giving a speech about how they can let go of petty emotions and work together, which again is a lie. Envy jumps out of Edward's hands, and then the Ishvalan guy somehow knows that Envy doesn't have much time, which, what? He telling this to Edward, causing Edward to not to try and restrain him again, and I will stress again that this could have gone really badly for the heroes. He then crawls several free and says that he's not jealous of the heroes and their ability to work together, which again isn't true, because they argue all the time, and at multiple points in the story actively go and seek out their main goals apart from each other. And the only reason why they get pushed to certain areas is simply because of circumstance and people talking Edward and being like, oh yeah, you're kind of dumb for saying that. Everyone's in agreement, so I guess I'm not going to say anything anymore. Oh, dude. The show sucks so much. And then, to make matters even worse, after he could have obliterated the heroes, he while crying, he kills himself. This could have gone very badly for various reasons. But when they robbed me of the most cathartic thing in the show, they then added gasoline to the fire by having this be the resolution of Mustangs arc. This show is so bad. It is not the godfather of anime. It came out in 2009. Freaking Cowboy Bebop came out in 2001. Dragon Ball was in the 90s. Berserk came out before that too and got a re-release. This is not the godfather of anime. This show sucks. I don't understand how people like this. This anime isn't even deserving of being brought up in conversation for the best anime ever made. I'm sorry. Dragon Ball Z Kai came out like the same week of this show, somewhere around that time frame. I think they're in the same year at least. Imagine coming home from school or coming home from doing like some type of work and watching the Frieza arcs and then immediately putting this show on and being like, oh, they're of similar quality.
Closing time.
So in conclusion, this show is really bad and not worth watching. Go watch the old Golden Age arc of Berserk or Cowboy Bebop, then watch this show and tell me how they're even close in writing. Heck, go watch like the first couple freaking arcs of Z, which are kind of, I think it's the same length of Z Kai, and then watch this show and be like, huh, this show's a master. It's one of the greatest of all time. You can't do that because it's not feasible. It's not possible. This show sucks. Tonal differences aside, it doesn't hold a candle to Berserk, Cowboy Bebop, Z, even the original Dragon Ball, dude. I'm done, bro. This show's bad. One small thing that did bother me, though, I mean, this whole video was things that bothered me, but this one is really nitpicky, is how freaking Edward can bond a soul to a piece of armor for a couple of years, even though we're taught that the soul will try to go back to his original body or something, and it could be defective or something like that. And it only cost him his leg, but to bring Alphonse back to life completely, he had to stop using alchemy. How is that an equivalent exchange?